Funding for Working Lunch is provided by the financial contributions of viewers like you. Additional funding is provided by First Bank, McGuireWoods Consulting, and Fidelity Investments.
I'm Joe Stewart. Pull up a chair and join us for a working lunch where we talk about agriculture, the #1 leading part of our economy in North Carolina. If you think it's hard being a farmer, think how hard it would be living without food.
Working Lunch is a production of UNC TV in association with the North Carolina Free Enterprise Foundation.
Thank you for joining us for today's Working Lunch. We have a great conversation today about North Carolina's agricultural community. Larry, you run the state's largest agricultural organization. Tell us a little bit about the nature of agriculture and the role it plays in our economy.
Well, most people in this state get up every day and go to work and go about their lives and never realize how big agriculture is. Agriculture is an $84 billion a year business in this state. 17% of the people that get up this morning and go to work in North Carolina owe their jobs to agriculture and agribusiness. We're the third most diverse state in the nation, agriculturally speaking, behind California and Florida. So it's a huge industry in this state. The second largest industry is not even a close second to what agriculture is. So it's important to the state of North Carolina and to our economy.
Lorinda, you're one of those 17% of the people that get up every day and run a farm. Tell us a little bit about your operation.
Absolutely. I like to say that it's the only industry you can't live without, because without agriculture you wouldn't exist. You have to have food and fiber. Our farm is in eastern North Carolina, and we grow hogs and row crops. We have corn, wheat, and soybeans, about 5,000 acres. And then we have we wean 44,000 pigs every year, and we wean about 20,000 top hogs every year for Smithfield Foods, Goldsboro Millage.
Right. Bo, you're one of those 17 too. What's on your farm?
Yes, I am. We also raise hogs for Smithfield as well on our farm. We grow row crops, corn, wheat, and soybeans on approximately 2,300 acres, and then we also grow produce. So we're interacting directly with the consumer there with strawberries and sweet corn and other things that we sell there at our roadside stand.
You know, a lot of people don't think of farming as being a business, but it is a business, and it's a particular type of business. What are some of the challenges that you face?
It is a small business, mainly family farms in our state and in our nation. I think over 95% of the farms are owned by families. It's just very important to realize that we face the same challenges that all other small businesses face. One of the biggest being health insurance and the rising costs there. It's an extreme burden on small farms like ours, to where we're paying roughly $1,500 a month for a family of 5 for a catastrophic only policy. That's quite a burden for us to face. But that's something that all small businesses are facing, and we truly are a business.
Mm-hmm. Now, Bob, you represent a particular commodity, peanuts. Yeah. What's going on in the world of goobers?
Well, in the world of goobers, I represent about 1,100 peanut farmers, and we grow a little over 100,000 acres of peanuts in North Carolina. The association that I represent, we sponsor research, and research has been very, very important, not only in peanuts, but in agriculture in general. When you look at the price that we were getting 20 years ago for corn, soybeans, wheat, peanuts, versus, it's about the same. It hasn't changed much in 20 years. And I don't think many people would be working for the same thing they're working for today that they were getting 20 years ago. And what we have done to make that possible is research. I mean, the yields that we're getting on the commodities has increased greatly because of research done in case of peanuts is done exclusively at North Carolina State University, because the commercial industry doesn't breed peanuts. So we have done that with research, and that's extremely important. That's been one of the major things that we've done, in addition to marketing and trying to sell all the extra peanuts that we're producing.
Those commodity prices are just so low right now. It's really hard to make your bottom line float, because we're selling every one of our crops, corn, wheat, and soybeans, for $1 less per bushel than it took to grow that crop.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I've heard it said many times that farmers are the only businessmen who buy everything that they buy at retail and sell everything they sell at wholesale, and they pay the freight both ways. And our margins are extremely tight right now.
Tight.
And, they are.
Are you hearing that from farmers everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, this is, agriculture certainly is cyclical in terms of supply, demand, and prices follow that supply-demand curve. And right now we're in one of those down cycles in terms of prices with oversupply. We're going to have this year one of the best crops of corn we've had in this whole country. I mean, all the I-states, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, the crop is huge. We probably in North Carolina are going to have one of the best crops overall that we've had. Now, obviously, weather is always a factor, and the cotton crop is not in, and Bob Sutter's peanuts are not in yet. But you know, it's a cyclical thing. It will come back, but when it's down, it's really tough on these farmers here, whether they're small farmers or large farmers. As both said, 95 to 98% of our farms in North Carolina are still family farms. They may be large family farms, but they're still family farms. And so at Farm Bureau, we work with all of those farmers, whether they be small family farms or large commercial operations. They're still providing for the economy of the state. They're still putting food and fiber on the tables of North Carolinians, and so it's a big business.
Well, is it a business that's been affected by the globalization of our economy? Are you seeing more in the export markets?
Certainly, exports are huge. About every third row has to be exported, and so exports are a huge part of North Carolina's ag economy. Obviously, we export agricultural products not only to our neighbors, NAFTA neighbors, Canada and Mexico, but we export it all over the world.
Right. We were talking earlier about the quantity of peanuts that are sold to China.
Yeah, probably this year, probably about 150,000 tons will go to China. We're going to export totally about 800,000 out of 3.2 million tons that we produce in the United States. Trade is very, very important, whether you're talking about corn or peanuts, because if we don't have those markets, if we can't move product into those markets, then we're going to be caught with an oversupply, and that is going to hurt the prices even worse. You know, I mean, it's going to really depress prices.
When you talk about agricultural exports, when you mention, as Bob mentioned, China, it skews a curve. You take tobacco. We still here in North Carolina, even though tobacco probably is not as important as it once was. Last year, we still sold to our farmers. Our farmers received about between $600 and $700 million from tobacco, and that tobacco is about 80% exported. In North Carolina, we still grow 50% of all the tobacco that's grown in the United States. But when you talk about selling it to China, there are more smokers in China than there is population in the United States.
Wow.
There are about 310 million people, and there are more smokers than that in China. So the export market is huge, and trade agreements are part of that whole discussion. When you talk about trade agreements, have received a lot of discussion, certainly in these political campaigns. But trade agreements and exports are important to North Carolina agriculture.
Agriculture is a business so complex, but half of the state of North Carolina now are folks that are non-native. They've come from some other part of the country to live here. What are the things these folks need to understand about what it takes to run a farm?
There's a lot they need to understand, and anytime you're in a group of people, if you'll ask anyone, do you live on a farm, there's very few folks that'll raise their hand in that group. But if you'll go back and say, well, how many of your grandparents lived on a farm, you'll see quite a few hands come up at that point. So we're just 2 or 3 generations now removed from the farm, but it's amazing how much people have forgotten about what really drives our industry and what drives the food industry here in our state and certainly in our nation as well.
There's such a disconnect between the production of food and the consumption of food. Most people don't even think about where that plate of food came from when they sit down to order their food. They don't even think about the hours and weeks and months that it took to grow that food. Like a hamburger or a steak, it takes 3 years to grow, but they consume one every day.
Right.
And they don't consider the amount of work that goes into that plate of food because they don't do it anymore.
Right.
It's just
Eggs come from the grocery store.
eggs,
not from the
milk,
farm.
cheese,
Yeah,
it all
that's
comes
right.
from the grocery store. And pizzas are just completely foreign to farms. They don't understand the connection to a pizza. So
Do you grow pizzas on your farm?
Absolutely.
The pizza crop has been very good this year.
Well, one thing that I try to stress to people that don't know anything about farming is do you know how much it costs, and they know better than I, how much it costs to be in the farming business? I mean, a cotton picker, $800,000. A sprayer, $300,000. A good-sized tractor, $300,000. You know, they borrow $1 million or $2 million to put the crop in the ground, and it all depends on whether it rains or not, or if it rains too much or rains too little. And they're gamblers. They're high-stakes gamblers. And for it to pay off, everything has got to work right. And we just need to make sure that the government is there to smooth things out as they move along. Because if a guy goes out of farming today, or a lady goes out of farming today, they don't get back in. They don't lay out, I think I'm just going to lay out a while and see what happens. Well, they've got equipment payments. They lose their land. If they're renting, they lose it to somebody else. Or if they own it, they can't make the land payment. So it's a fragile system that we must make sure that we have a safety net that will smooth this thing out as prices as they are now are very low. That's really important. I try to stress that as much as possible.
Organizations like ours, the Farm Bureau and commodity groups, we deal with all the commodity groups in the state. We have not only peanut growers, but Cattlemen's Association, Pork Council, wine grape growers, dairy producers, but all these groups now have to play to two audiences. Not only do they have to talk to legislators and policymakers about what their needs are as a specific industry, but we also now, farmers are talking to consumers, because consumers with the internet, technology, people should know where the food comes from. They want to know where the food comes from, and farmers have no problem with that. So we have to spend, Bo and Lorinda and others all over the state have to spend a considerable amount of time now just trying to educate consumers about what you're doing. They have a right to know what goes on the farm, how the food's produced. Public relations now is a huge part of American agriculture. Bo, wouldn't you agree with that, Bo?
Yes, sir, 100%. And I really think that that's one of the areas that we as farmers probably haven't done the job that we should have done. All of us would rather stay on the farm and work and take care of our job and do that and stay at home and not tell what we do each and every day. But it's very important that we let the consumers and let the public know not only what we're doing, but why we're doing it. They'll see then that we're good stewards of the land and that we're good stewards of our environment, because not only am I feeding your family off of our land, but I'm feeding mine as well. And we're going to do everything that we can do to take care of that.
And you're raising your children on your farm,
yes,
and you're doing everything possible for their safety,
that's
as
right.
well as your neighbor's safety.
That's right.
As we're sixth-generation farmers, we've not moved in 6 generations, but the neighborhood has changed. And so what was good for the neighborhood 6 generations ago, now you've got special interest groups coming in, or new neighbors coming in from another state. They don't understand, or they criticize what you're doing. They find a crack.
To the point that Lorinda is making, North Carolina is currently, our population is growing here, 10 million plus people.
Ninth largest state in the U.S.
And we are losing farmland at faster than the national rate. That's one of the things that Commissioner Troxler and others we're concerned about, certainly, and that has an impact, because everybody that lives in a rural area now, Bob Sutter, are not necessarily rural people. And so we have a responsibility to keep our industry growing and going, but we have a responsibility to educate people about what we're doing.
I think you're exactly right, and to yours and Lorenda's point both, North Carolina is growing, and it's growing rapidly. I saw there was an article in the newspaper this past Sunday about the changing landscape of agriculture and how 281 new residents in North Carolina each day. So that's going to take a lot of infrastructure. You've got to have a place to live. You've got to have roads to drive on. You've schools to go to. Restaurants to eat at is taking farmland.
And with all these people moving in to the rural areas, one of the most important things is present use value. If the farmer has to pay tax on his farm based on what the tax department thinks that he might be able to do with it. In other words, well, you could divide all that up into lots and sell. Well, he's not. He's farming it.
Right.
The only way that he can stay there and stomach the tax bill is for the present use value. That's extremely important in North Carolina.
That's the best tool that farmers and rural people have in their toolbox to preserve farmland in this state.
To be able to keep it in the farm. That's
keep it in the farm.
exactly right. And the other thing, Mr. Wood, and you know as well as I do through the voluntary ag districts, with all these people coming into what were once really rural areas, they need to understand what farming is all about and that way of life. They need to know that I'm sorry if my tractor disturbed you at 7 o'clock on Saturday morning, but it's time to
Or if
get
my
the crop
tractor's in
planted.
the road when you're trying to go to work.
Yes.
Just moving equipment up and down the highways and byways of North Carolina now is certainly a challenge. And we have other challenges dealing with agriculture. If you look at the tax policy in the state, not only property tax, but you know, some of the tax exemptions that we enjoy in agriculture are necessary. Farmers are not price makers; they're price takers. They can't add all the cost of regulations, whether it be environmental regulations, labor regulations, and add that onto the cost of the product. A lot of people don't understand that you just can't add it on.
We sat down last week, Larry, and I mean, we looked at what we did to apply for all those regulations that we had to have to make it legitimate on our farm. We spent 6 weeks, 6 40-hour weeks, filling out regulatory paperwork, certifications, and training in the year 2015. 6 40-hour weeks.
Particularly, these are livestock producers. They have to comply with regulations on top of regulations in terms of how they handle the livestock, how they handle the waste. I mean, it's a huge amount of paperwork now. Most of our farms, many of them, almost have full-time compliance officers just to keep up with the regulatory paperwork they have to do.
What are the other pressures as a business? I mean, what are the types of things people don't understand about? You say you spent all of this time with regulations, and most small businesses deal with that. What are some of the other implications for the regulations that you have to abide by?
Well, one of the biggest things is what Mr. Wooten just said. We are price takers. When the cost of regulatory burdens are passed on to the farmer, we can't pass that on to our consumer. There's no way for us to do that, to set the price that we receive for our commodities. And so that ends up eating directly into what was already a fairly razor-thin margin.
Yeah. Well, in sort of thinking about the changing nature of North Carolina, the challenges that you face as farmers, what are the things you think public policy officials need to understand? If you could have somebody's ear and they would listen, what would be the thing you tell them that they need to understand better about farming?
You know, I went to a presidential rally recently, and I made the comment, I just would love to sit down for 1 hour with somebody who could talk to that presidential candidate and relay my message, because I feel like that's very important. I feel like if we don't speak up and speak out to the people that are making our policies, who are disconnected from the agriculture world most of the time, then there's no way that our needs can be met. And if we're not viable, then we're not in business, and there's no more food and fiber.
Talking about regulations, one of the things that is going on in Washington and EPA is Waters of the U.S., where they are EPA wanting to control more and more and more areas of water. And that may be a big gully on his farm, or we don't have gullies anymore with soil conservation, but a waterway.
It may be a minor dent in the field that fills up with water on a day like today.
It's just another situation where it's going to greatly restrict his ability and her ability to farm, because you don't want to have to, every time you look at what am I going to plant, where am I going to plant it. You know, you want to look at soil productivity, you want to look at the crops you're going to plant. You don't want to look at, well, here's my list of regulations, I got to make sure that I do all this, when it's just a minor, it's wet, a minor part of the year, and EPA wants to control it. Now, there are efforts to stop that, but we haven't been completely successful.
With another thing, Joe, with our diversity of agriculture in this state, if you take Christmas trees, fruits and vegetables, tobacco, ag nursery and greenhouses, you know, you got sod, shrubbery, all this, those are very labor intensive, and agriculture is in North Carolina is a very labor intensive industry. And most of that labor has to be immigrant labor for many of our crops. And so this whole immigration issue is huge for North Carolina agriculture. Even though it's a federal issue, it ought to be fixed by the Congress of the United States. It should be fixed, but the ineffectiveness, the inability for Congress to fix it causes problems back down here for our farmers and for our small businesses, such things as driving privileges, on and on and on. So immigration policy is also a challenge that ends up back here in North Carolina.
Yeah. What other types of things do you think this growing state of North Carolina, what do the people of North Carolina need to know about farming that they don't understand?
Most people don't understand just the process of getting the food to the plate. And American Farm Bureau and North Carolina Farm Bureau do a real good job with a program called Ag in the Classroom. So we take information into the classrooms and we teach children where their food comes from. But who we really teach in that classroom are the teachers and the parents when the children take the information home. So that's a really good program.
For a number of years, we piggybacked Ag in the Classroom with the little corn maze on our farm, which we weren't open to the public. All we did was bring in school children during the school day, and it was amazing some of the questions. We'd take a little hayride on the farm while we had the kids there, and we'd show them, and we always had a theme, and our theme most years was what's for breakfast. And we'd talk about the things that they saw on the farm that day that they may have had for breakfast that morning, or a product made from that crop. And it was just amazing to see that light bulb come on. And you're correct, not only, even though I'm in rural North Carolina, not only were the students amazed, but a lot of times the teachers were not connected to that either.
I had a teacher one day, we were talking about Thanksgiving and turkeys, and you know, the children in school always draw the brown turkey with the orange and brown and feathers. And I said, you know, your turkey that you eat on Thanksgiving Day has white feathers. And the teacher argued with me. She said, no. Thanksgiving turkeys are brown. I said, no. Your turkey, no matter where it came from, it has white feathers because it's a market turkey.
One of the things I think the citizens of this state ought to know, even though people always love to talk about it, Bob, and say, well, the average age of the farmers are 58 and we're worried about running out of farmers. No, we're not going to run out of farmers. You have young people like Bo Stone and Lorinda and families. We're going to have a good crop of farmers. They may be fewer in numbers, but they're more highly educated. They're highly technical. They use the internet. They use highly sophisticated equipment. They have college degrees. They're looking at depending on our land grant universities for education. All those things are going to ensure that we've got a good, stable food supply, not only for this country, but for around the world. But we've just got to make that environment there so that can happen.
I think you're exactly right, and access to our land grant universities is very important as we're raising our kids in rural North Carolina. A lot of time the public school systems in rural North Carolina might not be exactly what it is in Raleigh or in Charlotte. It may not have as much access to AP classes and other things.
How about broadband?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Internet and broadband.
The internet access is not the same in the country as it is anywhere else, and so I think it's very important that we're still able to send our children to public universities and to the land grant universities because they are coming back. I also am a 6th generation farmer to farm some of the same land that my ancestors did, and I'm raising 3 children now, and I hope that 1 or more of them are that 7th generation to come back and to run a farm. It's a small family farm, but it's still business. And to do that, our children need to be properly educated.
Well, Larry and I were at a meeting 2 days ago, and Dean Linton, College of Ag and Life Sciences at NC State, was going over the different options that a student has. It may not be to get in that fall semester after they graduate from high school to NC State University, but there are numerous ways to get in over a time period that I won't go into, but there are ways. Dean Linton is working very hard to ensure that a student that wants to go to NC State and major in ag can get in. And so they're working on that one, Bo, but it is very important. But back to one of your situations about questions about what do they need to know, and I think the local ag, the local food movement has done more to really educate people who live in Raleigh or Greensboro or Winston-Salem about farming. You know, if they say, well, this broccoli came from so-and-so's farm, you know, wow, is that right? And they ask questions about, well, somebody must be growing it, somebody must be living on the farm, making a living.
And the local food farm to fork movement has certainly allowed new people to become involved in agriculture, and on a small, particularly around your growing urban metropolitan areas, urbanizing areas. It's really allowed some folks to get into farming that probably Bob never would have had an opportunity to get into it. But you've heard Bo and Lorinda about a lot of the issues you're talking about, the issues of agriculture, but we're talking about the issues of infrastructure because you're dealing with rural communities. It used to be, we're seeing now a greater interdependence between healthy rural communities and a healthy agriculture. It used to be we talked about farming and agriculture. Today, if you're going to have a healthy, thriving rural community, you got to have a healthy agriculture. And by the same token, if you're going to have a healthy agriculture, you got to have a healthy, thriving rural community. And so those rural economic development is huge in this state because of that interdependence there that probably never was before.
What a great conversation, and I want to thank all of you for making today's working lunch literally possible. So thank you for what you do and the role you play in North Carolina's economy. I've enjoyed this conversation greatly. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Enjoy it very much.
Working Lunch is a production of UNC TV in association with the North Carolina Free Enterprise Foundation. Funding for Working Lunch is provided by the financial contributions of viewers like you. Additional funding is provided by First Bank, McGuireWoods Consulting, and Fidelity Investments.